Going. Good morning. Shockingly, some of the tech started to not work. There we go. All right. Hi, welcome. My name is Professor Patti. Patti Napolitano. I'm the owner of Wellness Cleveland. And my heating pad is on. This is pretty great. Okay. Today, I was just looking up because I couldn't remember which one of my jams from the Jam Lady is for coronation chicken. My guess is going to be that it's the curried rhubarb chutney. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. That looks like it. But the papaji, which is plum, sugar, ground cinnamon, cardamom, ground ginger, ground clove, black pepper, yum papaji. So I'm talking about the black pepper, and there's allergens here of star anise, which I think that's in sausage and Italian stuff like pizzelle. So I don't think I'm allergic to that, but I'll let you know. The Jam Lady is in Gwynedd in Wales, and I happened to meet her when I was in Holyhead this summer. I also managed to meet a friend of the show partner, friend of the class, some folks from the North Wales Housing. So at North Wales Housing, they were sharing clearly some stringers, which helped me in my travels. That was my backpack carrier when I was traveling internationally through the airports. But they had, I just shared in the comments below, if you're watching on YouTube, the North Wales Housing had some things celebrating Hate Crime Prevention Week, and they had some great resources. So North Wales Housing is an organization in Wales with around 2,700 homes spread across Gwynedd, Anglesey, Conwy, Denishire, and Wrexham. And I had the great fortune to meet workers and try samples and be part of the Holyhead Festival just by luck. And there were Rotarians there. They were not selling fish at our Rotary festivals. We have a fish wagon. They were selling something else. They talk about the North Wales Housing Organization. They were so excited to talk with me, obviously, about equity and their services. And I've got a great little link to friend of the show, the Jam Lady. If you're traveling through Wales, it's not to be missed. And I got both of these through customs. My mom was not as lucky with the ones I bought her, but I guess she's just going to have to go back, and maybe we'll have to enjoy them with some tea on our next trip to Wales, the land of song, where they truly had a town crier come and sing to us when we met. It was pretty magical. Today, on Wellness Cleveland Objectives, we're finishing up our Maton 2008 article. This is an article that has accompanied my course in community organizing for the last 10 years, and I'm reading it so we can convert it for accessibility. Now, we have accessibility resources at the Cleveland State University. We have accommodations, we have those things available. However, if I'm including community partners and I'm in an online course, I'm preparing materials now for things that will be in the spring. So my community partners, thanks, Bill Gates, they don't have access to any of my PDFs that are stored on Cleveland State University. It's difficult for me to know what permissions I have. So sharing these things, we're going through this long process of figuring out what we have permissions to. And do you know what the fair use is for intellectual materials? You can just think about anything. You just read these at the library, and you can go to the Cleveland State Library if you're in this area, this region. It's actually a community library, and you can have some access to it. If you're going to be taking one of my courses, actually, we're developing this into an open educational resource as well. So as I've taught this course over the years, what I've learned is sometimes people don't just need a simple Google Translate. Sometimes people need it translated from written English to written Arabic to And sometimes people need my lectures translated to sign language in a different language. So the more audio and the more prep work I can do, the more accessible this becomes. So thanks for joining me. One of the other things that I really love to do is contribute to YouTube, because social media, YouTube, the internet, it's largely available in white countries, in white-dominated countries with internet access, with English speakers, and the kinds of things that are spoken are entirely up to users. So here I am feeding our large language models with the things I like thinking about. And I have an extra added bonus, even though this is not paid and not part of any job, that someday I will have at least one viewer. If you don't know this, there are only 3 people who officially read every single research article: the author, the reviewer, and their mother. This video will be viewed. My mom is not going to watch it. But my grandchildren might miss me someday, so maybe they'll come and see it. So hi, little ones. All right. Blazing ahead. We're on page 14. And I think we left off at the subheading of the external impact of empowering community settings. Now we turn to the third part of the paper, the external impact of empowering community settings, specifically their pathways of influence on community betterment and social change. Historically, there has been relatively little community psychology focus on this topic, although this has begun to change in recent years. E.g., Evans and Prilotensky, 2005, Jansen et al., 2007, Zimmerman, 2000, Peterson and Zimmerman, 2004. Across the studies on empowering settings reviewed for the current paper, 3 pathways of influence can be identified. 1, increased numbers of empowered citizens. 2, empowered member radiating influence. And 3, external organization activities. See figure 3. It's circled. Those are the 3 external pathways. The pathways will be briefly depicted, primarily using examples from AA, Youth Build, OCO, and RAWA. Subheading. Maybe the other one was a heading. This is a subheading. Who's to say? Increased numbers of empowered citizens. In terms of the pathway of increased numbers of empowered citizens, in the adult personal empowerment domain, empowered adults can be expected to experience enhanced individual well-being on various dimensions. Hasso, 2011. For example, in the case of AA, research has indicated that involvement has been linked not only to reduced alcoholism, I feel like I really read this already, but at the population level to a reduction in liver cirrhosis. Smart and Mann, 1993. So when we're talking about selecting programs that have a financial bottom line in our community, this Smart and Mann article from 1993 is talking about a population-wide reduction in cirrhosis. And cirrhosis has stages and is incurable. That's a liver disease that you have that's progressive, which means it's expensive. So if we can prevent the disease altogether, that's dollars that we're not spending as a community to care for preventable chronic illnesses. In the positive youth development domain, empowered youth can be expected to be more resilient in the face of environmental adversity, leading to enhanced psychological well-being and positive engagement in daily life. So they're talking about this in terms of youth build, but we see this all the time in foster care campuses and in healthcare, not because we think the kids are going to be so much better from being in foster care, but because we're trying to reduce the impact of the damage we know it is going to create by providing resilience and youth peer interactions and purpose and meaningfulness, like all of these things targeted during adolescence. Empower the youth, and empowered youth can be more resilient. So the Youth Build, which is Han et al. 2004. In the case of Youth Build, follow-up research on program graduates indicates positive educational, employment, and psychosocial gains. Employment gains, do you know how hard it is to find an evidence-based employment model? If you have an evidence-based employment model and you can find one that has a measure for who maintains employment 6 months after getting the job, that's a program I want to hear about, because we don't measure it that way. And like, I don't want to get a job for a day. I want to get a job that I can keep. So employment, let's do it. All right. The latter, psychosocial gains, includes, for example, a substantial increase in life expectancy reported by almost 2/3 of surveyed program graduates. So this is a really interesting number, which is how many years the respondents lived after completing the program. That's great and rare and expensive longitudinal data. And it's really sad data. So after graduating the program, let's say these are youth who are in 18 to 25. That's most youth programs, right? Maybe it's 14 to 25. The mean increase of surviving after completing this program, most kids, the mean number, which is it's a kind of an average, they lived 42 years after this program was done. When they did this program, they lived an average of 30 years longer. That's 30 years of life. So what is the price of 30 years of life to you? When we're talking about equity and we're talking about health outcomes, those are the numbers we're talking about, is giving people a chance to have an additional 30 years. In late adulthood, when we've already stopped like rolling our ankles playing basketball in the park and stuff. They're really great, calm years. They can be. These and related positive findings are viewed by the program evaluators as evidence of a substantial shift in how program graduates view the world and their future place in it. In the civic engagement domain, empowered citizens can be expected to manifest enhanced level of political efficacy, civic skills, leadership, and community engagements. Smock 2004 and Warren 2001. For example, in the case of OCO, which is Oakland, ethnic minority participants from lower income and working class areas, that means, West Oakland, appear to manifest these gains, Wood 2002. So the gains are political efficacy, enhanced levels of political efficacy, civic skills, leadership, and community engagement. Those are all the gains I want in my life. All right, what OCO, what are you doing? All right. In the social movement domain, creating a social movement? Okay, so the social movement gains in self-value, political efficacy, and emancipation-related needs and rights can be expected. Emancipation rights. For example, in the case of RAWA, evidence suggests enhanced psychosocial empowerment among women members, along with gains in critical competencies such as achievement of literacy, which is Brodsky 2003. And that, when we just keep talking about RAWA in this article from 2003, which is just burning me up inside, because I'm wondering how many of the people in that study are alive today. How many people have survived today and what kind of state they're in. Whew. It's a small world. Radiating, this is another subheading. Radiating influence of empowered members. A second related pathway of external impact is the radiating influence of empowered members. Rochon, 1998. Van Til et al., 2007. The levels of influence range from family and social network to institutional attitudes and program development in organizations to state national policy. I will briefly illustrate with an example of each. Thank you, Ken. Radiating effects at the level of family and social network can occur through modeling and other forms of interpersonal influence. Several of these processes are illustrated in this quote from a RAWA member. My affiliation with RAWA changed the mentality of my family. They visited and saw the freedom, education, and what I had learned. They changed, and now my brother distributes Payam-e-Zan, RAWA's political magazine, and is very supportive. My sister reads it, even though her husband was initially very restrictive and critical. But after several visits, he changed. Brodsky, 2003, page 146. In terms of empowering member radiating influence at the level of community groups and organizations, I present two examples, in this case from two of my own research projects. Okay. The first example involving change in institutional attitudes is from my research on the Meyerhoff Program, an empowering setting that helps African American college students achieve at the highest levels in difficult science majors and proceed to science PhD programs. Prior to the initiation of the program, few, if any, did what? Achieve at the highest levels. This quote is from a biology faculty member. In the past, prior to the Meyerhoff Program, a student in your class who was Black was likely to not do well. This is not untrue at Case Western Reserve University today for African American students in their PhD programs. Their perception is they do not feel like they do well. I wonder if the Meyerhoff Program could go there at Case Western Reserve University. Okay. As soon as Meyerhoff students started earning A's, becoming very insistent on going into research programs and being successful, all of a sudden you couldn't make that assumption. Looking for success rather than failure in your Black students, that's a big change. That's a big institutional change. That happened in my department and it happened throughout the institution. Maton, 2004. The second example concerning radiating member program development is from research on the Mankind Project, a men's mutual support organization focused on helping men to decrease adherence to traditional masculinity norms, in the process becoming more emotionally open and committed to missions of service. Building on the norms and integrity and support experienced, one member helped to initiate a man-up personal sharing and support group for male students at the historically Black university where he works. Interestingly, the success of the program led to the development of a related group for female students, Star Sisters. On occasion, the two groups meet together. Furthermore, the Man Up program was recently adopted at a second HBCU, Maton et al., 2006. Look how incredible that is and how unsurprising it is. And if you're familiar with civil treatment models, they talk about this with surgeons and in courthouses, how there's this like culture of when people say like, oh, it wasn't welcoming or no one helped me or no one mentored me, they're like, yeah, that's how you get to the top of the anthill, and like there's this very strong undercurrent of that in academia as well. And so it is not surprising to me that there is not an expectation of success or that students who are minorities report what everyone reports. Like, what do you know about Columbia University? If you've thought about it, if anyone cares about you, they told you they eat their young. That is a culture to say they eat their young. This is a culture shift, and they talk about when you pay attention to the culture shift, what happens? People succeed, and that is ultimately what we want. We don't want to punch down on the people who are succeeding, but if you stop being a raging asshole to all of your students and all the people you're teaching and training and mentoring, their health outcomes and their engagement and their performance improves measurably. Social sciences, measurably, substantially. Okay. The second example concerning radiating member program development is from research on the Mankind Project, a men's mutual support organization focused on helping men to decrease adherence to traditional masculinity norms, in the process becoming more emotionally open and committed to missions of service. Building on the norms of integrity and support experienced, one member helped to initiate a Man Up personal sharing and support group for male students at the historically Black university where he works. Interestingly, the success of the program led to the development of a related group for female students, Star Sisters. On occasion, the two groups meet together. Furthermore, the Man Up program was recently adopted at a second HBCU, Maton et al., 2006. At the level of policy, two examples illustrate the radiating influence of AA members. First, many members of the influential National Council on Alcoholism, including its founder, Marty Mann, have been AA members. Second, influential AA member Senator Howard Hughes was the force behind the passage of the federal legislation that established the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. In each case, mobilization of resources to treat and prevent alcoholism can be attributed, at least in part, to the radiating influence of empowered AA members. Humphrey, 2004. External organizational activities. Turning now to the third pathway of external influence. The literature revealed an array of external organizational activities pursued by empowering settings to influence the community or larger society. These include member recruitment, public education, model dissemination, community actions, community services, resource mobilization, and policy advocacy. Bunch of articles listed here. Campbell 2005, Davis et al. 2005, Gold et al. 2004, Humphreys 2004, McAdam et al. 2001, Peterson and Zimmerman 2004, Schneider 2006, Siriani and Friedland 2001, Smith 2000, Wandersman and Florin 2000, Warren 2001. I will briefly illustrate the nature of several of these activities and the external impacts that follow from them, using OCO and RAWA as examples. The primary external activities of OCO are community actions and behind-the-scenes policy negotiations, Wood, 2002. The community actions are public meetings in which city officials are held accountable for solving local community problems. Local organizing committees in each congregation do much of the advanced preparation work, including conducting numerous one-on-one meetings with congregational members in which perceptions and viewpoints are shared and potential lay leaders identified. Within the congregation, meetings are also held with the varied constituent groups and with the pastor. Additional critical tasks include research to obtain compelling evidence base to the problem and possible solutions, and arranging for local media coverage. Professional organizers provide critical mentoring, support, and strategic guidance throughout. Developing ongoing relationships with public officials and key community leaders and groups is a second major arena of activity. Well-developed relationships over the long term facilitate influence, allow mutual areas of interest to be identified, and facilitate effective policy negotiation. Indeed, the proper combination of external pressure on the one hand and relational collaboration on the other is critical for success. Cf. Fohm and Wright, 2003. This proved to be the case in the resolution of the abandoned Montgomery Ward building. In the end, the building was demolished and replaced with two innovative, locally supported schools. Cf. Gold et al. 2004, Wood 2002. RAWA's external organizational activities include educational and humanitarian service provision, advocacy in the local community, resource mobilization, and policy influence. Brodsky, 2003. Empowered RAWA members conduct the educational and humanitarian services. Local advocacy is done by addressing problems in people's lives as described in the following example. A man was beating up his wife and his mother-in-law. Rawa members went to talk to him several times, as did the camp council of men. Other men who were beating their wives heard that Rawa goes to other houses about the council warning, and it changes their behavior directly because they don't want the council showing up to their house. Men also see how much changing their behavior helps relationships in the family and affects the kids. And this convinces them to change their mentality. There's so many things I love about that. Rawa has sought to mobilize resources and to impact policy at multiple levels. Brodsky, 2003. At the local level, under Mujahideen, fundamentalist, jihadi, and later Taliban rule, their policy work, Rawa's policy work, took the form of impacting the running of the local refugee camps, or attempting to convince local religious councils that girls should be allowed and encouraged to attend their school. At the national and international level, Rawa has been successful in seeing several former and current members of the organization, as well as various supporters, take an active part in policy work, including advocating policy for the post-2001 Afghanistan. Now, this look at the external impact of empowering settings should be viewed cautiously given the scarcity of research in this area. Nonetheless, what appears distinctive in this conceptualization, consistent with our values as a field, is the central role of empowered members. 1, as a direct embodiment of enhanced quality of community life due to individual citizen development and empowerment. 2, contributing to positive change through empowered member radiating influence. And 3, serving as the person power necessary for effective external organizational activities. The role of community psychology. I think you guys are doing fine, by the way. Now we turn to the fourth and final portion of this paper, the role of community psychology. As noted at the outset, we can contribute to empowering community settings through 2 primary routes. 1, increasing the number and range of empowering settings across various community domains. 2, enhancing the impact of already existing empowering settings in varied community domains, e.g. Perkins and Zimmerman, 1995, Shin and Yoshikawa, 2008. Several strategic approaches to each will be reviewed briefly. One approach to enhancing the number of empowering settings is collaborative interventions focused on setting reform. In the process, changing disempowering or unempowering settings into more empowering ones. C.F. Bond and Keyes, 1993, Cairns et al., 2007, Dokeki et al., 2001, Fetterman et al., 1996, Florin et al., 1992, Sager, 2006. Such work should ideally build upon extant theories of change and systematic empirical research related to the specific type of setting being focused on. One inspiring example of this work of this type is that done by educational reformer Hank Levin, whose collaborative work with individual schools involves whole school transformation. Binnen and Levin, 2004. Specifically, the empowering change process encompasses transformations in group-based belief system, core educational activities, relational environment, and opportunity role structure. It's only like 17 more pages, folks. Buckle up. A second approach to enhancing the number and range of empowering settings is to create new alternative settings. C.F. Chernis and Deegan, 2000. Are any of you working on third place programs? That's what this is, third place programs. Or safe haven programs. A classic example in our field is George Fairweather's Lodge program for former psychiatric patients, involving a long-term commitment by Fairweather to program development and systematic research. The lodges included many of the organizational characteristics and psychological mediators reviewed above, Fairweather 1980. More recent inspiring examples include successful efforts to create alternative educational settings in urban areas, usually aided by university and community-based consultants and collaborators. Two well-known examples are Deborah Meyer's successful East Harlem Educational School, aided by Theodore Sizer's Coalition for Essential Schools, House and McQuillan, 1998, Meyer, 1995, and El Puente Academy for Peace and Justice, whose development was aided by Latino educational consultants and university-based action researchers, Rivera and Pedraza, 2000. Less directly, but equally important, new social ideals that emerge from the scholarship and writings of critical and visionary scholars can contribute over the longer term to social movements and alternate settings that encompass and promote these alternative ideas. C.F. Rochon, 1998. A third approach to enhance empowering settings at a high level of intervention is through work in the social policy arena. A classic example is Ed Ziegler's work contributing to the development of the National Head Start legislation, which included core provisions for the empowerment of parents and community settings, or parents and community citizens, e.g. Ziegler and Munchow, 1992. In community psychology, a well-known example is program development and associated research focused on school restructuring, which has contributed in part to the growing national focus on small schools and schools within schools. C.F. Fentner et al. 2001, Seidman et al. 2004, Seng and Seidman 2007. Of note in this regard, East Harlem Secondary School and El Puente Academy, noted above, were both products of an innovative educational policy focused on community-based development of alternative schools in New York City. If you're looking for more current models, City of Cleveland Schools, CMSD, just won an award. They've been trying to be a blue ribbon school of excellence for at least the last 20 years. That's been a goal, is to be a school of excellence. And they just got an award, and they have some really lovely, innovative programs. If you guys are looking up school-based social work or school-based intervention programs, I would look at CMSD's website, and I would look at the research supporting Campus International, which is pre-K through 12, and it's on the Cleveland State campus. And, if you're one of my Cleveland State students, you should know about this program. Cleveland State also has high school students there's high school programs that are on campus there, including MC STEM, which is a high school, which is a CMSD high school junior and senior year. And there's groundbreaking. There's only 4 public all gender academies in the nation. And the city of Cleveland has one. It's an all girls academy. They have Warner on the east side and Douglas MacArthur on the west side. So if you want to look at school within a school or alternative models or magnet schools within schools, schools of choice, we have wonderful current research because these are, 25 years old. Looking to the future, policy relevant research and advocacy are essential elements of any successful strategy on our part to enhance the number and range of empowering community settings across community domains. In terms of enhancing the impact of existing empowering settings, one approach is strategic research, including evaluation research and strengths-based portrayals that help to legitimize empowering settings in the eyes of professionals, citizens, and policymakers. In the case of AA, for example, positive outcome research has helped counter the tendency of professional guilds to discredit its non-professional 12-step approach. In the case of my evaluation research on the Meyerhoff program, evidence of positive results has directly contributed to the program being proclaimed a national model. Best 2004. Relatedly, strengths-based portrayals as a form of strategic research can contribute to public awareness and alter public and professional attitudes and stereotypes concerning empowering settings and their members. For example, in my own work related to the academic achievement of African American youth, public and professional education has been facilitated by 2 published books describing the strengths-based parenting practices that led to the Meyerhoff students' pre-college success. Hrabowski et al., 1998, Hrabowski et al., 2002. Over 28,000 copies have been sold to date. Finally, community psychology and allied disciplines can also directly support, through collaborative partnerships, the external activities of currently empowering settings. C.F. Bennett, 2003, Jansen et al., 2007. For example, in the case of community organizing efforts, we can produce research that facilitates public advocacy, as Paul Spear and colleagues did in Camden, New Jersey, by generating data highlighting the link between abandoned housing and crime rates in neighborhoods, leading to an effective community advocacy campaign to upgrade housing. Spear et al., 2003. As a second example of collaboration, in the case of RAWA, Ann Brodsky played an active role in facilitating the media-based public education and resource mobilization activities of RAWA representatives in the U.S. Brodsky facilitated meetings between the RAWA representatives and both U.S. officials and private agencies interested in the status of Afghan women, arranged press interviews and coverage of events, organized fundraisers, and through public speaking, educated and interested U.S. audiences. Brodsky, 2003. My goal in this paper was to highlight the nature and distinctive value of empowering community settings. I've emphasized the integrative bridging potential of this concept for our field, proposed a set of common organizational characteristics and psychological mediators that contribute to member empowerment across domains and types of settings, and outline pathways through which settings and their empowered members contribute to community betterment and social change. Much work remains to be done to refine, expand, and test the concepts, characteristics, pathways, and processes proposed, especially given the relatively limited empirical base from which they were generated. As part of this work, the limitations and weaknesses of empowering settings, along with their strengths, will need to be examined and the multiple barriers to their development considered. Both the process and outcome components of empowerment will need to be further specified and boundary conditions established to ensure that a meaningful discernment of what constitutes an empowering community setting and what does not is clear. The relative advantages and disadvantages of a broad conceptualization of empowerment, encompassing individual as well as collective empowerment, i.e. individuals facing personal difficulties as well as historically oppressed groups, requires careful consideration. The viability, value, distinctiveness, and ecological validity of the 6 specific organizational characteristics and associated subdimensions and 10 specific psychological mediators enumerated will need to be carefully tested in the empirical studies of diverse settings and community domains, including, but not limited to, those examined in the current paper. Finally, further specification of the pathways through which community psychology and allied disciplines can contribute to the development and impact of empowering settings is necessary, including consideration of additional pathways, e.g., generative research on key underlying dimensions of intervention and action, beyond the 5 selected for emphasis. It is hoped that the current paper will help provide a basis for such future work. We have a few more paragraphs. In closing, as just noted, the conceptualization of empowering community settings, including the specific pathways and processes of influence delineated, are best viewed as works in progress. with substantial testing, refinement, and improvement to come. What is abundantly clear, however, is that increasing the number, range, and impact of empowering community settings represents a critical aspect of efforts to enhance quality of life and achievement of social justice by the marginalized and oppressed in society. It is an aspect of the struggle for community betterment and social change, positive social change, that is especially appropriate for us as community psychologists to focus on. However, we can only make limited progress in this area working alone. Forging interdisciplinary and intersectoral bridges with allied disciplines is essential if we are to make a substantive difference. Maton 2000. On a personal note, the work we shared here has special meaning for me, Kenneth Maton, as it represents an answer to the question that emerged in my thoughts unbidden 3 decades ago on the Long Island Sound, reading an advanced copy of Julian's textbook. Can I bring together my dual interests in the individual change and fundamental social transformation with the concept of empowerment? Needless to say, I expect to continue to wrestle with this question. For now, I hope the work shared in this paper is true to the core community psychology values I gleaned from Seymour and Julian at the outset of my career. Grapple with the important issues of one's time. Hold true to one's values in concert with valued peers. Do not place oneself above others. All citizens, including even those who appear most different or who face the greatest challenges, have the strengths and potential to succeed, given the proper resources. And finally, strive to amplify the voices and contribute to the well-being and self-determination of those who are marginalized and oppressed, locally, nationally, and globally. That was in closing, but here's the acknowledgments. I would like to acknowledge the valuable feedback received from colleagues Ann Brodsky, Angela Fetty, Keith Humphreys, Julian Rappaport, Terry Manarini, and Beth Shin, and the contribution of my award address support team, Amy Carrillo, Rebecca Helm, Mateen Ozdemer, Keandra Phillips, Shauna Pollard, Thais Regato, Mariano Sto Domingo, and Harriet Wims. So we have a few more pages of references. This is the reference section. So I have a loose Cornell method, which is we read the article. I like reading it out loud because you sit with it, right? You visit with it. If you are so fortunate to take classes with Dr. Celeste Collins, she has a journal format. And it's based on, she really loves learning methods, and it's based loosely on the Cornell method. So I like something a little loose on the Cornell method, which is I read it, and then I sit and I try to summarize it. So Maton tried to summarize it. He did summarize it in his abstract and summarized it in conclusion in the end and had some different perspectives on it. So what jumped out at me? One of the things that jumped out is that this seems a lot like a meta-analysis. He talks about interviewing people, but he really only talks about his own past work reviewing it. So this seems like a retrospective, a meta-analysis, which means it is someone who read this many articles with keywords about empowered community settings and try to look at the apples and oranges and kiwis and pears and all these different types of settings with all these different types of groups with different geographical and power influences. And what did we find? What we already know. If you grow up around 50 to 150 primates who mentor you, you do better. And we found ways to support it. So if you have really common sense things that you know, that is not evidence-based. Common sense is not common, and we know that. And Maton, to me, in this article, is really welcoming us to say, hey, I've done this for 30 years, and here's what the leading minds in the field. And we kind of know, like, there's not a lot of empirical research. There's not a lot of numbers and scales and things we can weigh. So even that the reduced or increased life expectancy, it didn't show that those people actually lived another 30 years. It showed that by the end of the program, they expected to, which doesn't seem like a big deal, like, oh, you changed these kids' minds. But if you ever talk to a person in crisis and I ask them, where did you think you'd be by the time you were this age? This is a crisis question I ask. So what before, where did you think you'd be now? Is that perception part of the problem? I've had people who were 20 say, I really didn't think I'd live this long. 20. And the choices that people make at 20, when they just don't, they think, well, it's all extra time anyway. It can be very nihilistic. So for that person to tell me, actually, after going through this group, I think I'd like to live to be 70 someday. That's remarkable, and that's going to change that person's quality of life. So I liked the number. I like that, but it's a reach to really understand what it means, and then you have to kind of imply what the impact might be. So future research is like looking at bottom line numbers, like we do with WIC. If we spend $1, we save $3 in Medicaid, like we do in Housing First. Housing is healthcare. It reduces the number of arrests and the money we're spending on housing people in jail, the money we're spending on providing medical care to people in jail, which is an inpatient setting. We could be caring for people in their homes, and it would be much, much cheaper, right? When we find dollar amounts, that's when we can write programs and when we can have empirical data to say, yeah, we think we're going to save $50,000 this year if we spend $10,000 in rental subsidies. Well, that's spending $1, saving $5. So how do we measure that? How do we know if we save the money? So you are engaging in community organizing settings as part of this course. What are the strengths you can measure? That's what this article looks at to me. And there's nice numbers of 1 through 3, 1 through 7, 1 through 12. Look at those and see what kind of factors apply to the project you're working on. I can't wait to join you for the next one. We have this many to get through. We're going to have such fun together. We're going to have such joy. Have a fabulous Saturday today.